Well, now just imagine if every person in New Brunswick, or almost every person in Nova Scotia, needed food from a food bank. That is how many people in Canada are using our food banks every month. Now take a look at these numbers from the 2011 Hunger Count survey. An astonishing 851,000 Canadians are being served by our country's food banks every month, and more than a third of those people are children. Close to 100,000 Canadians use a food bank for the first time every month. Mel Boutilier knows all too well what it is to look into the face of hunger. For the past 28 years, he has served as the volunteer executive director of the Parker Street Food and Furniture Bank in Halifax. Now almost 84 years old, he is a member of both the Order of Canada and the Order of Nova Scotia for his community service, and he is with us here tonight. Glad to have you.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Mel, I want to begin with this. As one who's been on the forefront in the fight against hunger for close to 30 years, how do you feel when you see numbers that suggest we're not winning that fight?
Well, I'm anxious, like most people are, to find ways and means that people wouldn't have to come to food banks. But I am thankful that we can be there when people have real needs.
Where is the onus when it comes to solving the problems that send people to food banks? I mean, do we have to lay this basically at the feet of the government?
Well, I don't think the government can do it all. I think that there's a need for volunteer organizations to be there. But I think the government could do more. And finding training programs, and we're doing some of that as well. We've just graduated 7 people who are on social assistance, and now they're carpenters. And I'm told today that each one of them have jobs. They're taken off of the social assistance role. And I think government can get involved more in helping people find work, find jobs, and support organizations like ours, so that we can be there to help people.
As we saw in those numbers we looked at a minute ago, we have hundreds of thousands of kids who are hungry every month. If I might say so, you came from pretty modest circumstances yourself, growing up as the son of a fisherman in Seabright, and you were hungry as a child.
Yes, I'm one of a large family. We were very poor. My dad was an inshore fisherman, and it was necessary for me to be out in the boat with him, fishing from before daylight until late afternoon. And many times we did not have enough food in the house to make a sandwich. And we would go to a tree, an apple tree on the little farm that we had there, pick a bag of apples and munch on them until we get back in late in the afternoon.
There were no food banks 75 years ago when you were a kid?
No, there was not. We just depended on what we could get ourselves. And but I want to tell you this, that when I was about 8 years old, I stood a box on end. It was an orange crate. Those times oranges came in wooden boxes. And I stood this box on end, and I thought I had a large audience, and I made a speech. And I said, when I grow up, when I get big, I'm going to do something to see that people did not go hungry. And of course, I never realized that I would get involved in this work.
I was going to say, in some respects, you're still on that orange crate today. You've been doing this work for, well, longer than many people do a job, really. You got into it at retirement age. If I might say so, you're looking pretty good for almost 84 years of age. But beyond the change and the increase in the number of people you're seeing at Parker Street and at other food banks, how have food bank clients changed?
There are people coming into the food bank now that just a few years ago were able to make it on their own. But the increase in price of everything has gone up so much, and their pensions or their minimum wage or whatever they're on is not keeping up to the place where they can pay their bills. And people need more than food. The people who come to see us come in because they can't pay their rent, or they can't pay their lights. They have a notice their lights are shut off, or it's going to be shut off. And sometimes they're so sad they break down and cry. They don't know where to turn. And it just breaks my heart when I see a mother sitting before me just breaking down and crying, saying my power's been shut off. In the wintertime especially, like last winter, and it'll be the same this winter, that I don't know what to do. And many times the mother will say, I can get by, but my children, I feel so sorry for them. And when you're there and seeing that face to face, it just makes you want to do whatever you can possibly do to help a family.
We're told that all of our social programs are sometimes misused by people, albeit a very small number of people. Do you think there's much abuse of food banks in Canada?
No, not as much as some people perceive. I know that for a fact. There'll be some, and that we can't help. But we can't stop doing for those who are desperately in need because a few people might abuse it.
Do you think there will ever come a time when we're not going to need food banks in this country?
No, I don't. I think our system is such that there'll be those who will have plenty, there'll be those who can manage on their own, there'll be those who cannot manage without coming and asking for help.
No matter how prosperous we get, we can't totally solve the problem.
No, we can't. And one reason I would say that is that, and I don't know how many would agree with the Bible on this, but the Bible says the poor will always be with us. So I feel sure that there'll be a need for us to do what we can to help poor people.
Mel Boutilier, we appreciate your considerable insight. And, of course, all your tremendous work in this field. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have something else?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Had a lady in to see me just last week. And she's a lady who worked for a building supply company for years. Mm-hmm. And she became ill with cancer. And she gets a small income of $640 a month. And her rent is $475. And she fell behind 3 months in her rent and was going to be evicted. And I was able to find enough money to pay her rent for a month. But what she needs is some kind of a motorized wheelchair. I want to find a way to raise funds to help that lady to get out of the house. And she says, I can't be stuck in the house. I need to get out. And so I'm looking for some way to raise enough money to buy it with.
While you've been talking, we've put your website address up, and that'll help maybe somebody who's out there watching who can help you in that good work.
Thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you for all you've done. Mel Boutilier. We'll be back in just a moment.